It's the Blane Laramie podcast with your very special host, Blane Laramie. Starring Blane Laramie, produced by Blane Laramie, editing and continuity by Blane Laramie. By the way, my name is Blane Laramie. Welcome to the podcast. Yay!
So complicated. Jeremy Rackauckus, who is my special guest today on the Blane Laramie Comedian Podcast. Introduce yourself, Jeremy.
Hi guys, I'm Jeremy Rackauckus. I'm the roast battle champion of Ventura County.
Oh, you bastard!
Yeah, it's tough luck on that one, by the way, Blane. I was really looking forward to.
Well, I wanted to introduce you as the roast champion.
Oh, okay.
Is that your only claim to fame? What did you do last night?
I was at the Comedy Store last night. That's a thing I did. I was good.
What did you do at the Comedy Store? Were you just there? Or?
I delivered 5 hot minutes and made Pauly Shore cry, rethink his career.
It's about time.
I'm just doing God's work. So, yeah, I got off stage and my friends were like, "Oh yeah, it was a rough crowd. Don't feel too bad." So, I thought I did fine, but beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
Well, first of all, what we're discussing is last night. What was it? The 26th of July, 2015, right? Yesterday, the 26th.
Yes.
You performed on the main stage at the Comedy Store for the first time.
That's correct.
The crowd wasn't tough so much as there's a lot of ebbs and flows, and it's a long night. The show starts at 8:30 and ends at 11:30. So you're dealing with like 3 different crowds. You're dealing with the fresh, sober crowd, the crowd with a couple drinks in them, and the crowd that just wants to go fucking home.
Right.
And you were like in the middle of the drinks in them and wanting to go home. So I guess to that extent, it was a tough crowd, but I thought you did great. I thought you did fantastic. I feel like you're not gonna, Sarah Silverman's the closest I've seen to just killing at that show. It's a really hard show to get everybody on board.
Right.
Because they're waiting for you to get off stage so they can watch their dumb cousin, do 5 minutes or whatever.
Right.
Not that your cousin's dumb.
And I was about 2.5 hours into a 3-hour show, so it was understandable if the audience. I saw people yawning; they wanted to go home.
And it is what it is. That's definitely, in my opinion, a little too long for comedy. I've heard it discussed before. I feel like about 2 hours for the entirety of a comedy show, and that's even if you have an Louis C.K. type headliner. 50 to 60 minutes for them,
right,
and an hour for the openers. And I think anything beyond that, you're really kind of pushing it.
Right.
But you did fantastic. I think, was that Craig's first time up there, do you know?
Yeah, I believe it was.
Uh-huh.
Was it Jorge's first time?
No, Jorge's been up there. I have pictures of. That's why I made sure to take pictures of both you and Craig.
Okay.
And you know what, fuck Camilo, because he's got more pictures. He's got pictures of himself on stage at the Improv. And until I have pictures of myself on the Improv, I'm not taking any pictures. Yeah, fuck him. That sounds fair, right?
Right. Thanks for the picture. You got a great one of me in the most cliched stand-up comedy pose.
Well, there's one even better where you're doing the hand movement.
Yeah.
It's so funny because you're on stage and it's like, my camera's a piece of crap and it's like, what is the deal? And it's like, you got this blurry hand.
Even my face, I have the eyebrows.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I like filming myself. That's why I like getting myself on video. I noticed in the beginning, when I got comfortable, I would pace back and forth, literally towards the audience and then away from the audience and then towards the audience. And it just looked so silly on video.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it took me a couple months, but now I walk back and forth instead of, I walk west and east instead of south and north.
Well, I want to see myself on video now to see that, because I know I do walk back and forth, but I always feel so cool when I'm doing it that maybe if I got a better look at it,
Well, I think it's important to be very self-aware, and you are definitely self-aware. One thing that bothered me about you when you were on stage is how you cram your hand in your pocket.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, get your fucking hand out of your pocket. But at this point, and I'm a very particular guy. That's kind of how I look at when we're doing comedy. Are you self-aware? Do you understand where you're coming from? Do you have some sort of theme to what you're trying to do? And you just seem to be on par in every category except for that fucking hand. So I was like, that's what I focused on. But it's become endearing because you're not nervous, but like what you're saying seems very important to you. Does that make sense? Like it seems like it should be a nervous reaction. You probably are nervous, but it comes off as like it's very important to you what you're about to say.
Yeah, my very first show, I remember it was entirely like I had hands in my pockets the whole time. I said everything really fast, and I made it kind of like part of my act where I'm taking out my note cards and just like shit and just like screwing everything up. But it was like I tried to run with it and it went pretty well. And I remember people saying afterwards like, yeah, you had this nervous energy that made it like work. So I've tried to just sort of, I don't purposely try to be nervous, but if I have any tics like that portray some nervousness, I try to just roll with it as part of my vibe, I guess. So I should check out the videos and see really how it looks as far as me, shoving a hand into my pocket. But
I don't know what I have. I do know I have some footage of you. I really don't. And plus, not to mention, there's a bunch of footage that's been like backlogged, and it's like deep in like 3 files of crap that I have to dig through. But I know I have some stuff. I'll find it. I have a file for everybody in the Ventura comedy scene, or even like at Quincy, or some people who I just see regularly who have been able to film. I have footage of almost everybody, because as you may recall, I used to ask permission, like, hey, do you mind if I film you? Because I didn't want to, people to think I'm like trying to steal their jokes. I'm going to post their material without their permission. And then I just got lazy and I just let the thing record, and people didn't seem to mind. So
when Jessica makes her inevitable documentary of our rising comedy tide here in Ventura, you've got all the footage she needs to document.
Actually, I think what you mean to say is when she makes a documentary about my
your meteoric rise to the top,
AKA my killing spree.
Oh right. Yeah. They'll be like, oh, and he also had all this weird footage of his fellow comics.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we'll all have to like go on a killing spree as a group to make sure we can use all that footage. That's probably something to consider.
A Groupon for murder.
Actually, Tara was doing something. I don't know if she still is, but she had borrowed my camera a couple times, and I have some footage of her like interviewing comedians, and then like just kind of like filler B-roll type footage of us hanging out and stuff.
I seem to remember that happening at one point.
I mean, I have a full. It's literally called Tara's Thing. That's probably the only time I won't make an innuendo. When we're talking about Tara's Thing.
What's even too easy for Blane?
Too expensive, dude. She says it's $300 to have sex with her.
I see.
That's ridiculous.
I
can go to
$250. High as I'll go.
I'm telling you, you can do better for cheaper. That's all I'll say.
She doesn't give a friend's discount. I'm so sorry.
She won't tell you how it's I know, we should stop. But I'll finish with this. She won't tell you how much this is oppressing trans people while she gives you a hand job. How's that? That's the friend's discount.
Wow. Okay, we went there. We had our fun, Tara. We love you. We're coming back.
She's not going to listen to this.
Okay, fine.
She's not going to. Nobody listens to this. How many of these have you listened to?
2?
In its entirety.
1. I watched the whole Camilo one.
Oh, that's the worst one.
Camilo, if you're watching, love you, baby. The
one about the thing that bothers me about that one is I hadn't learned about normalization, which basically brings the sound to the highest decibel level and kind of levels everything out. And Camilo talked very low.
Well, what's funny is I enjoyed it well enough, and the thing is, I never really listened to podcasts in general. It always seemed to me like, how do you have the patience to listen to like an hour to somebody? You could listen to so much music or do something else in that time.
Do you read?
I do read.
Okay.
Yeah, but even a lot of what I read is like internet articles. That takes like 10 to 15 minutes.
When's the last time you read an actual paper book for pleasure?
I'm reading one right now.
What's it called?
It's The Mists of Avalon. It's by Marion Zimmer Bradley, great fantasy novel. I'm a fantasy writer, so that's
a lot of guys coming over to fix the plumbing turns into a orgy, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a sexual fantasy
yes!
writer, I'd like to clarify.
Starring local comedians.
Yeah.
Blane entered the room naked and aware.
What would our sex writer names be? I think like
Mine would be Blane Laramie. That's already. I think I'm good there. Like I could write trashy romantic novels under the name Blane Laramie, and nobody would bat an eye.
Right. I guess Jeremy Rackauckus. Jeremy.
Well, my favorite nickname of yours, which is one you have yet to embrace, is Jeremy the Rectum Wrecker Rackauckus. That's my favorite, but you have yet to embrace that.
Well, it's not really the kind of thing that you say about yourself. You know, I can't introduce myself as Jeremy the Rectum Wrecker Rackauckus.
That's a good point. I forgot how modest you are. I apologize.
Oh, but with the one with you and Camila, I was seeing, you know, for podcasts, it's sort of more, it gives you the sense of kind of like having a good conversation with your friends, if it's done right, I guess. And so you just sort of, you tune in the way you tune into a conversation. And,
yeah.
And so I kind of got a feel for it with that one, and I liked it.
That's kind of the vibe I'm going for. I definitely want to have a free-flowing, like we're not going to, you know, discover any deep secrets about you. I am not Howard Stern, you know, this is just more or less you know, my main goal is to really just kind of encourage the local comedians, anybody who wants to be a comedian, and anybody who's around where we are or who is behind us. I feel like, you know, the little bit of information that we've attained in this short amount of time, they can benefit from.
Right.
Which brings me to a point I would like to discuss with you, unless you want to talk more about how much you love Camila more than me.
I love you both equally. I love all my children.
Okay.
Same.
If you were hanging from a cliff and you had me in one hand and him in the other, and you had to let go of one of us to save the other, who would you let go of to save?
Sorry, Camila. I'd save Blane. He gave me coffee. He's
Plus, I'm
on
lighter.
the podcast.
I'm lighter. You could just say like Camila was too heavy, and I couldn't.
We gotta make a judgment call.
He will not be missed. That's a good question to ask a parent if they have two kids. Like, well, if you're hanging over the side of a cliff and you had to let go of one to save the other, any good parent would just flip over the side with them. That's what I would do. Fuck it!
I'd love to see the dude. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, see the dude. I'll edit this all out later. This is just going to be me talking. The final product is me talking, and I edit out all of your voice.
Right. No, I was going to say, I'd love to see the dude who's just decisive enough that it's like, you know, sorry, Jane, I've really always liked Jack a little bit better. I didn't think we'd reach a point where I had to explain this to you, but...
I love my son more than my daughter.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
I'm just kidding. I really wanted to stick that one out, but instantaneously that dad guilt's like you're going to hell and you don't even believe in hell. I like my son more. That I can admit to. I like my son more. He wants to do things like hang out and play video games and watch Batman. My daughter wants to tell me to get out of her room. So in that aspect, get along with my son so much better. Obviously, my princess is a doll, and I love her very much.
Of course. You know, parents in love and the most beautiful thing and shit.
Yeah.
So, on to serious questions?
Well, our good friend and comedian Luke, can I give his, Bird Cumwell? I don't know if we can announce his real name. Is going to be moving to China for a year to teach English.
Yeah, we're teaching English to kindergartners.
So have you decided to actually do it? 'Cause last time
I have, yeah.
Okay.
It's really just a matter of logistics. There's this slight chance that it might not work out
Mm-hmm.
in terms of figuring out those logistics, but I'm committed at this point to making it work. So, we're 99% likely that in 2 weeks I will be in China. You know, teaching English for a year.
Would you be willing to push a right-wing Christian fundamentalist view for me?
Well, yes and no. We're gonna have to do it under the radar, where you know, there's not exactly the same civil.
I don't think you can do anything under the radar in China. So, I'm gonna have a hard time wording this. So, going to China and teaching children English is more important than your comedy career right now.
Okay, I've been thinking that one through. Where my comedy career is, you know, it's a career in only a very light sense. I am putting, you know, some effort towards it, but, you know, I have some fun shows lined up, but it's not like I'm headlining shows. It's not like I'm making any money at it yet, which is not the most important thing. But my thought process here is, I was trying to figure out if what momentum I currently have with comedy was worth sacrificing, you know, for the year in China. And near as I can tell, right now it kind of is. I can get a lot of life experience. Comedy will still be here when I get back. There's also open mics in Shanghai that I believe are like an English-speaking audience that I can try to stay sharp and fresh with, and not lose any, not lose any familiarity with it at the very least. More important than my comedy career, I guess so. I do think I can still pursue it when I get back, and hopefully pursue it, even better than I am now. That's where I'm at, I guess.
In all fairness, Jeremy is an educated human being. You have at least a bachelor's.
I have a master's.
That's what I thought. Yeah, a master. Oh, in writing.
So basically a bachelor's.
Practically an associate. No, but you are an educated, and you are young. You're in your mid-20s.
26.
26. Okay, yeah. Yeah, dude, I agree. I didn't really feel like it was going to be detrimental to your comedy career. When I say career, I mean, in the same way that somebody wants to be a professional juggler has a career juggling or something.
Right.
And that's a bad example, but none of us are making money. So when I say career, I just mean like it's our discipline. This is one of the few places where I'm disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely something I would like to make money off of. Do you, being an educated writer, was your intention to eventually write comedy? Was your intention to write sitcoms or anything like that, or was it more of a novel type writing?
Yeah, my master's degree was for writing popular fiction, which it was about writing novels.
So Fox News, basically.
In pop fiction, yeah. No, like writing fantasy, sci-fi novels, that kind of stuff, and but writing and comedy were two separate pursuits for me, and like comedy just sort of started as a hobby that I had started having a lot of fun with it. Things picked up kind of, and no, I never set out to be like a comedy writer, and even now that doesn't actually sound that appealing to me. I would probably want to do stand-up and write stuff and write novels, but not really feeling the whole like merging between the two.
And it's a hard merge to make too.
Right.
It's not unless it's like Spaceballs is a bad example. I don't know, heavy metal. I can't think of anything, but very few successful crossovers between fantasy and comedy that I can think of.
Game of Thrones, big comedy. Everybody's sharing some laughs.
Apparently, I don't watch too much TV. I get enough incest and murder at home. I don't need to watch it on TV. So.
Right.
But yeah, I don't. That's the funny thing is like when it comes to that type of stuff, like that medieval, I'm not interested in that at all. Like I like a lot of sci-fi and action and stuff like that, but that doesn't interest me in the slightest.
No Lord of the Rings for you?
No.
I
mean, as a young man, I enjoyed the books and I enjoyed the original animated version of the Hobbits, but I was never really like super excited about it. In the same way that a lot of like science fiction, space type stuff doesn't really interest me. I'm kind of more. I like fantasy that's some way, shape, or form, grounded in reality. I guess.
Okay.
As a young man, I was, when I believed in things like heaven and hell, I was very into demonology.
Oh yeah,
I actually considered going into demonology, and then in my opinion, I felt it was all just an absolute hoax. And that didn't actually necessarily change my mind because I also wanted to be a con man. That's a true story. As a young man, I wanted to be a con man. Yeah.
What? Wow, that's so opposite from what I was. The most pure little kid. So tell me a little bit about what goes into the psyche of a child who wants to grow up to be a con man.
Oh, I just always liked it. I've always been obsessed, or I should say, like I've always been influenced by counterculture and like the seedier side of life. As a young man, things like I grew up in nightclubs. As a young man, my mom's first husband was in a few bands, so I was in nightclubs like 5-6 nights a week, or bars, or stuff like that. And then guys like Rodney Dangerfield were kind of offered to me as people that I noticed, like my peers, my stepdad and his friends all looked up to him, and he made them laugh. So that's a good portion of where I come from as far as like, how I started in comedy in the first place. Right. It's like, oh, the guy who makes everybody laugh, like that's he's the shit. He's the big cheese. But for me, fantasy has to be rooted in reality for me to really get into it. Like Doctor Who, I'm not interested in at all, because it seems like they can just make shit up whenever they want.
I'm not a big Doctor Who fan either. As far as the coolest thing about sci-fi, I think, is when it lets us think about stuff in reality. The best sci-fi takes some little part of something, like what if we had teleporters, and it thinks okay, what would that do to our lives?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if we had teleporters, wouldn't that mean, if it takes us apart and puts us back together, wouldn't we be dying every time we got taken apart and put back together somewhere else? And it raises like these questions that do actually apply to our understanding of this world.
Mm-hmm.
And Doctor Who, which a lot of the time just kind of, throws some really fantastical plot at us, it doesn't really do what sci-fi can do best. So I think the best stuff actually kind of accomplishes, kind of would have it in a territory you enjoy, but...
I agree.
Have you heard of Black Mirror?
I don't think so, no.
Really good show. Does exactly what we're talking about here. It takes like one cool sci-fi concept and makes us think about how it would affect our lives. It tries to ground it in the drama of real people, and yeah. Black Mirror, everybody. You heard it here first.
You guys, Black Mirror, send Jeremy a check. That's Jeremy, Rectum Rector Rackauckus, 555 Main Street, Anytown, USA.
So counterculture. Yeah, wow. That's a very, very different side of the tracks from me. I didn't grow up in a church or anything, but I was pretty religious as a kid. And, so, the concept of evil being a cool thing, I couldn't even get that till I was like 16 years old or something.
You had obviously been familiar with Star Wars by then.
Yeah, other people like Darth Vader and stuff, I didn't get it really.
Really? Wow.
Older. Yeah. I liked that his lightsaber was red because red was my favorite color, but that was about it.
Yeah, no, to me it was, that's one at least very prominent spokesperson for the dark side.
Right.
That's always like,
Well, and it's funny because now I'm totally, like, the Sith are so much cooler than the Jedi. Like, the Jedi are all, like, repress your emotions and don't enjoy life, and the Sith are, like, they apparently meet, they pursue all of their passion and shit, and so Star Wars is basically telling us, like, emotion and life and enjoyment are evil, and they make you a dickhead.
Well, there's supposed to be a lot of political and religious implications depending on how deep you want to get into the storylines, but that kind of just, to me, is reminiscent of the Third Reich versus the Allied forces. The Third Reich just looked fantastic. Boy, didn't they look great? And we're sitting there in our stupid ass, green on green on green fatigues, and they're getting dressed up by Hugo Boss. Like, to me, I think when George Lucas was writing, he had a lot of that in his head, because there are supposed to be socioeconomical and religious and political implications. Whether or not you believe that or not is entirely up to you, but I feel that he did intend for that to happen. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, I mean, it definitely seems to be there with the stormtroopers having their matching uniforms and everything, and yeah. And it's always, also, it kind of reminds me of how, like, when you see, like, The Patriot and stuff, like, they do the same thing with, you make the bad guys just these robots in uniforms.
Yeah.
Like, they show the British soldiers as, like, this very organized, military, and that's always, if you can make a robot out of the other side, it makes it a lot easier to root for the scrappy humans hiding in the bushes. And
well, I mean, at the end of the day, that's all a movie is like a canned emotional response after an hour and 55 minutes. Right? I mean,
all a movie is, that's some great shit right there.
Well, I mean, for lack of a better way to put it, most people make crap for movies, right? It's like, okay, here's the story arc, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and oh my god, all hope is lost, and wait, we forgot about this, and then this happens, and everybody's happy.
Yeah. Yeah, the story arcs do happen a lot in movies. They
don't have to happen the same every fucking time, though. Oh, those damn story arcs, that character development. Oh.
The rising climax. Oh, here we go again.
Like, let's just skip straight to let's start with the climax. Confuse the fuck out of everybody. Like, I guess there's more. Maybe I didn't express myself in a very eloquent way, but I really like, like Louis C.K. is both a brilliant and a bad example, because I'll use him for an example for everything, but I'm on board with his, why have a happy ending? Why can't we just have an ending where just shit happens, and because that's how life is, and let's stop perpetuating this happy ending bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have to be sad where the kid's puppy dies at the end, but like a Chuck Palahniuk type ending, right? Palahniuk, how do you...
I think there's something to be said for, having some stories be that way, and it depends where we're going, what you want your stories to be. You can have a lot of different stories for different kinds of things. Some of them are there to make us think and make us learn about reality, and some of them are just there to give us enjoyment, to, emphasize values that we already are on board with. And I don't think there's anything wrong with any of that. I think so. Movies can accomplish whatever their creator wants them to, and that there are a whole bunch of different great things that you can do with that medium. So, in the past I used to think like a story needs to be one thing. It needs to have one purpose, and I thought that purpose was to make us think and question ourselves and grow as people. And I started realizing, I'm enjoying a ton of shit that doesn't do that, and I don't think that stuff needs to go away. Like that, there's room for all of it.
That's what the Avengers are for, though.
Yeah, definitely. If you're saying I don't think all of our drama movies and whatnot need happy endings, I'm on board with that. But I don't think happy endings on their own, tired as they are anything that we need to be shoving out the door,
Fine.
Fine.
I guess I agree.
I can have my fun.
I'm just tired of the same freaking thing over and over. Miss more coffee?
Yeah, sure.
Get us more coffee? Alright, hold on.
We'll fix this in post.
Yeah, I'll fix this in post. So, chatting about movies and how much... okay. Give me some of your more favorite movies. It might be your favorites, but what do you consider the type of movies where you can put in at any given time and almost guarantee you're going to enjoy it?
Okay, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Okay.
My favorite movie, probably. Do you know that one?
I've never seen it.
Okay, that's the kind of sci-fi I'm talking about as far as being awesome. Where
Jim Carrey, right?
Jim Carrey, he gets a service to have his memories of his girlfriend deleted from his mind. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the movies inside his mind is we're watching the memories get deleted. And he realizes midway through how valuable those memories are to him.
Oh, wow.
And tries to stop it from happening. And so it gets real mind-bendy. And it's also really heavy-hitting. I like that one a lot. Also, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Nobody saw it.
I haven't.
Nobody liked it. Well, people who saw it liked it, but nobody went to see it because it had Michael Cera in it, I think. And everybody was really not feeling Michael Cera at that point in time.
I think Scott Pilgrim fans weren't more to the point. Wasn't there a bit of backlash from the comic book fans?
I think the Scott Pilgrim fans went to see it anyways. There just wasn't enough of them out there.
I went to go see episode 1 and episode 2 and episode 3 knowing damn well they're going to be shit. Exactly.
Right, so they all went to see it. And honestly, I think everybody who went to see it liked it a lot. But it was just, for whatever reason, it couldn't get that momentum going. I saw it 3 times in theaters, and I've seen it over a dozen times at this point. I could tell you every line probably.
You're not the first person to have that feeling about that movie. I know I've had this conversation with somebody, maybe you, but I feel like I've had this conversation before. So maybe I'll give that a gander.
Give it a look if you have the time. It's fast paced.
Because I thought everybody loved Michael Cera. I thought he was America's sweetheart, especially back during the Arrested Development days, which is around when that took place, right?
No, it was a little later. See, he was great on Arrested Development. Everybody loved him. Superbad came out. They were okay with him.
Juno, everybody fell in love with him, right? Wasn't that?
Well, Juno and then a series of movies he made all had that kind of indie feel to it. Mm-hmm. And it was also around the time Jesse Eisenberg was getting kind of recognized. And so there's these two...
Who's that?
He's the kid who played Mark Zuckerberg in The Social Network.
Yeah, no idea.
He was also in Zombieland, and he plays a He plays a very Michael Cera-ish character. So people were saying like, what's the difference between Michael Cera and Jesse Eisenberg? Nothing. They both played the same skinny, whiny pussy in every movie they're in, and
it had a happy ending.
Right. There was like this, oversaturation of the Sarah Eisenberg skinny white dude deal, and then Scott Pilgrim vs. the World came out and nobody was feeling it. So, but the movie is, it's got it shows a dude processing the world the way I think a lot of young dudes who grew up, when I did, where he sees everything in terms of video games and like comic books and tries to, it doesn't actually show that it's happening in his head, but you kind of get the sense that, he has to fight the 7 evil ex-boyfriends. It's his metaphor for working through the baggage of a relationship. And he breaks it down in comic book and video game terms, and it's fun and fast-paced enough that it was kind of just big wish fulfillment fantasy for any dude my age, pretty much. And yeah, I think you'd like it if you gave it a shot.
You have to watch it. So we got the
Eternal Sunshine.
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yeah, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Let's see, what else was a really good one? This isn't like one of my favorites, but it's still fresh in my mind. I just saw Love and Mercy.
I haven't heard of it.
It's about Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys. Okay, it wasn't like my favorite movie.
I hate them more than I hate the Beatles.
Wow. Strong words. We crossed.
Especially since I'm sitting across from somebody with such horrible taste in music. But go on.
How would you even know what my favorite bands are? It's not.
How would I?
It's not like I wear clothing that has their logo on it every day.
Go ahead. Yeah, we can finish, please, because.
Love and Mercy. What was I even gonna say? It was fine. It was okay. I'd really rather think of
Well, it's gotta be like for me, it's like Back to the Future or Goonies. Like what are those movies that are like the guaranteed like?
Lord of the Rings, actually. The Lord of the Rings trilogy, I think as a whole taken, might be the best movies ever made in terms of I can just get swept away from any random scene you pull out. I'll sit there and watch the next 12 hours, to finish it off, and I'll get complete. I must have seen it, a half dozen times at this point, and I still get just as emotionally invested every time. They did such a good job with it, which is why I'm just baffled by how badly they managed the Hobbit trilogy. Like, it's the same dude running the show, What happened?
I think it was a budget issue.
Yeah, too much of a budget, maybe? Like, he didn't...
It wasn't allocated properly, maybe? I don't know. That's a good question. You tell me, dude.
Yeah, I have no idea, but...
A lot of people speculated it was just an attempt to basically build theme park rides and merchandise.
Is there a theme park ride of the
alleged? I don't know. Somebody wrote this really awesome article about how he felt like a good portion of the action in the movie in the what was the second trilogy? Not the Hobbit, but what'd you say?
Lord of the Rings.
But the Smeagol or Smoggle or.
Well, the second trilogy. They came out with the prequel trilogy that was the Hobbit stuff. There was just the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy.
Okay, but the Hobbit came out after the Lord of the Rings.
Right.
And the Hobbit is a prequel?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So that's what I'm talking about.
Right.
The Hobbit, which is a prequel, a lot of people were basically anything nowadays is going to be turned into a roller coaster if you haven't caught on to that. I mean, Universal Studios, I don't be surprised if it happens. That's what a lot of people are speculating. I mean, a good third of Universal Studios is being turned into fucking Hogwarts, or...
Yeah, I went on that Harry Potter ride in Orlando.
Oh, la-di-da, you hear that? Orlando!
What can I say?
Fucking Orlando,
I've had
China.
my fun.
How was it?
It's good. I didn't get any of the butterbeer. It was too long of a line for butterbeer.
That sounds disgusting. Is that a reference to the movie?
In Harry Potter, there is a drink called butterbeer, and our Universal Studios sells something that they call butterbeer there. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's probably like cream soda with like some added flavor into it. but there's
Oh, it's not alcoholic?
Right, it's
Okay.
just this crazy long line.
That's why the line was so long. Children are allowed in it.
Right. So I got to go on the ride. Did not get butterbeer, but the ride was cool. They do a really good job with getting stuff that makes it feel like it's coming towards your face. If that's not the kind of ride that appeals to you, though, and you need those crazy drops from like roller coasters, then it might not be for you.
I don't know. I'm at an age now where I'm over roller coasters, but my kids and my son especially is starting to get into them. So there's this overlapping. So you know, my kids have been begging me to take them to. They both have season passes for Magic Mountain. They're always asking me to go. I don't know. Like, I don't know if I have that in me. You know.
Right.
There's the couple of rides at Universal Studios. With Mummy's Revenge, Jurassic Park.
Right.
And then Transformers.
They also have the Simpsons ride. It used to be Back to the Future.
The Simpsons ride, though, yeah, it's literally the same format as the Back to the Future. You know, you're in the motion thing. I don't know if you've been in it or not.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's literally like the same theater and everything. I didn't realize up until like within this last year, I assumed we each had our own little room and our own little dome. In the Simpsons ride, all of the 20 cars that are going are all going and watching the exact same screen. I didn't realize that, yeah. If you look up and behind you, a lot of times you'll see other cars moving around. You'll see just like the front end of them, but you can see, I always just assumed we each had our own individual little room, but that's not the case.
I would have thought so too.
Which just kind of gives you an idea of how big that freaking screen actually is, because it's got to be even bigger than I have a hard time with the depth perception figuring out how big it really is.
Have you ever been on one of those rides? You know, there's like, they fit like 8 people into those cars. Have you ever been on one of those rides where like there's your group of 4, and then the group of 4 who you're with, who you don't know, are just the most obnoxious motherfuckers ever? Like,
that's just tourists, in my opinion. That's just tourists. To me, that's like a cultural difference. Where here in the United States we say things like "excuse me" when you bump into people. Other cultures do not. One thing I love, and you know, I hate fucking tourists. I hate human beings. I hate crowds. I think I should be allowed to walk around with an SKS at Universal Studios and randomly shoot people.
oh yeah, me too.
You feel like I should be allowed to walk around with
like
SKS?
You should be allowed.
But one thing I love is going on the Transformers ride with tourists, especially ones that have never been on it before, because they freak the geek out. They have such a good time. I have more fun listening and watching them.
Right.
Than
Yeah.
I've been on that ride at least 30 times. I've been on that ride so many
I
freaking
haven't been
times.
on it. What is that, a roller coaster or what?
It's a hybrid. Are you familiar with the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland?
Yes.
You know, you have your little car and it goes on the track, and then you go to different rooms, for lack of a better way to put it.
Right.
That's how the Transformers ride is. You're supposed to bring the Allspark to fucking something.
Do you succeed?
Just barely. Every single time, too. Just barely. Every single time.
Wow.
You'd think one of these times the Decepticons would be like, okay, well, he hits us here, and then he hits us there. Like, maybe if we go around this way.
Wouldn't there be one, like, wouldn't that be a great ride where you get to the end and it's like, we failed, you know? Like,
You have been enslaved by the Decepticons. Oh, good guys aren't that good after all.
kids are just crying as they leave.
And it's 3D, so that's kind of fun. And it's like 4D in the way where they have this scene where, you know, Megatron, is it Megatron? Yeah, shoots a cannon missile thing at you, and then it explodes right in front of you, and then this big old giant directional heat lamp that, you know, they flail on real quick, and a bunch of fun stuff like that. And it's in 3D.
Or 4D, I guess.
4D, I guess, yeah. Yeah, but you're in a little cart, it's moving back and forth, and...
That's
Or like,
cool.
you know, the Indiana Jones at Universal Studios. You know,
Right,
it's
yeah.
something similar. I mean, it's not fast. It's not a actual roller coaster. It's more just...
Right, it's, it moves a little bit, like enough so that you feel the reaction to what's
Yeah, but
going
it's
on.
almost more of like a show, for lack of a better way to put it,
Right.
than a ride. It flips you around and turns you, and you fall off a building and stuff, so you get a little excitement, but...
Yeah. It's cool. I've been on that Jurassic Park one enough times that I think I remember every part of the ride. Like, there was a time I went where we just had an hour, like, of the park being pretty much empty, and we just went on the Jurassic Park ride over and over. I must have gone on it a dozen times in that night. Like, but there's only one drop in it. That's another one that's like, it's basically more a show than a ride.
Well, there's those two little itty bitty. I think there's only one. There's one little itty bitty drop when you go inside, and then you go around to where the Velociraptors have destroyed the computers or whatever, and then you go back up.
And you get that waterfall.
Yeah. Tyrannosaurus almost gets you.
For how many times I've been on the ride, I still freak out every time I'm about to go down that drop. I am the biggest coward when it comes to drops on rides.
My son doesn't like that ride because of that drop.
Really?
He'll ride the Mummy's Revenge, he'll ride Goliath, he'll ride Batman, he'll ride Viper. He won't ride the Jurassic Park because of the drop.
Wow. They pace it so slowly that like, and you see that Tyrannosaurus behind the waterfall the whole time.
Yeah. Well, it's always funny to watch the animatronics malfunction, where it's like sitting there like,
right.
Like, oh, just put that Velociraptor out of its misery.
Right.
Okay. Your horrible taste in music, go.
Oh, okay. Well, as anybody who knows me and who doesn't, knows, I wear a lot of Red Hot Chili Peppers paraphernalia. They're my favorite band. They've been my favorite band since high school.
Let me clarify. When he says a lot, he's wearing the sweatshirt with the shirt underneath with the exact same graphic.
Yeah.
The Chili Peppers, what would you call that?
The star?
Yeah, is that just a star?
The Chili Pepper star.
The Chili Pepper star with the exact same Chili Peppers font and everything. He like undoes the sweatshirt and it's still there.
It's even cooler than you're probably picturing it in your head. I know you're thinking like, whoa, that's pretty cool, so I just want to tell you, it's even better. But yeah, I like the Chili Peppers. I make no bones about it.
I'm just wondering, do you only realize you need more clothes when you're at Salzer's? Is that how this works? Like, I could use a new there's a shirt right there.
Here's the thing. I don't buy that many clothes, so a lot of what I wear is, like, gifts that people give me, and so when people are buying gifts, they're like, well, what does Jeremy like?
Yeah.
We know he really fucking likes the Red Hot Chili.
He wears shirts.
Right. Yeah, he wears shirts.
He wears shirts.
Yeah, the Chili Pepper sweatshirt was a gift. At least 2 of the shirts I have were gifts. I have like 4 or 5 different Chili Pepper shirts, so some of them were gifts. But
I think you're lucky because for me, it wasn't band shirts. It was underwear and pajamas with cartoon characters on it. People would always give me like Simpsons boxers or Family Guy boxers or Family Guy pajama pants or pajama shorts. And that went on for years, and I was like, yeah, they're underwear, no one's going to see them. I like The Simpsons, I'm not, like, ashamed of it. But then, like, after a few years, when that seems like that's all I have, and I'm trying to explain to a woman, like, no, I'm a grown man, it just looks like all my underwear have cartoon characters on them. And I realized, like, after a while, like, I got to get rid of some of these.
But it's kind of your thing now. Do you even want to change?
I do, because I feel awkward about it. Like, I don't, like... It really was becoming like to the thing where it's like all of my underwear had The Simpsons or Stewie from Family Guy on them, and it was just like, I'm like, if you notice, I used to own, like, similar to how you dress, I was always wearing a Metallica shirt or a Slayer shirt. That's how I dressed. I literally had like 30 Metallica shirts and like 20 Slayer shirts. You'll be lucky to find 5 in there.
Okay.
You can thank my ex-girlfriends and a
you
bunch
really
of my would-be friends for that. No. I have people borrow my shirts and then not give them back.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say like you had an ex-girlfriend who made you get rid of them and dress.
I had an ex-wife.
Oh, I see.
Who took the liberty of getting rid of them herself, and then drunkenly telling me 3 months later.
So would you like to talk more about that?
You know what? Bring me on your podcast. My ex-wife and I are good friends, but that is definitely not good friends. She's like, fuck him. We get along. Like, I don't know him. But that is definitely one of the few things that has to this day stuck in my side, because I understand she wanted me to dress like an adult, but I wasn't ready for that, and she had already,
right,
let me impregnate her, so it's too late.
Yeah, well, it's weird where, as far as the dressing like an adult thing goes, like, I definitely recognized, like, boy, wearing all these band t-shirts and stuff sure felt cool when I was 19.
Yeah.
Now that I'm like 25 or 26, maybe it's not the coolest thing to be wearing, but it's all I'm comfortable with at this point. Like,
what do you replace it with?
Right? I can't just put on fucking flannel.
It'd be so awesome if you just walked up one day with like pleated khaki slacks and like a polo with like a braided shirt, your shit tucked in.
I don't know what else to do at this point.
Exactly.
T-shirt, jeans, black slack. My friends have noticed that all I wear are black slacks, pretty much. Those are the only pants I know how to wear.
Yeah.
And
I'm right there with you.
stuck.
I forced myself to wear jeans, and I'm really good at it. But trust me, black slacks, I'm on board 100%.
So I think being a stand-up comedian is pretty much like the only profession in which it's acceptable to be shitty at dressing yourself. You know, like you can.
It's
go
it's almost in your best interest, I think.
right. It's just one more goofy thing about us that we don't know how to.
We're just so awkward and disheveled.
Right. I prefer to think of it as so focused on the harsh truths of reality that.
All right, Albert Einstein, settle down.
Or Aristotle.
Aristotle, I like that. Were you around during the time when I used to dress up?
When you used to dress
For
up?
open mics? Yeah, I'd wear a tie or like a bow tie.
You know what? I might have seen it, but I might not have really processed it as your thing, you know?
Well, my thing was, if I was going to get noticed, I wanted to be noticed for how I dressed, not for my shitty jokes, or how much I was sweating, or how much like guys like you, or Columbo, or Jeff, or Jorge made me so mercilessly nervous.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Jeff Faria? Is that?
No, Jeff Gordon. Yeah, Jeff Faria.
I was trying to think if there was another Jeff in our comedy scene.
I know Jeff Gordon's the only one I could think of, so I guess not.
Yeah, I remember for a long time hoping everybody did shitty, like at all of our shows, so that way, you know, when I went up, if I just did okay, it was still like, well, Jeremy, you were a breath of fresh air during that show.
Yeah.
It sucks because everybody's gotten pretty good at this point. Where
I've noticed that too, dude.
Everybody's delivering good material and like new material. You know, at these open mics. So, you know, I'll go to the open mics without having really thought of what I want to say, and I see everybody do a great job, and it's like, I don't know, Camilo. You can, if I don't go up tonight, that's all right.
Well, that's your process. We all have our own, you know. Sometimes I'll have a sentence and I can basically ad-lib an entire joke about that. Other times I need to write 3 or 4 paragraphs and realize, oh my god, this isn't even that good. So it just depends on the joke, I think.
And well, actually, speaking of the whole thing about, you know, going up or not going up at a show, it's something I maybe want to bring up, what your thoughts are on this. Camilo once kind of like pulled me aside and said, like, Jeremy, you kind of like back out a lot of the time when you don't feel like you have a good set ready to go. And I don't think that's a good way to be going about comedy. You gotta like, you know, bomb. You gotta take risks. And,
Yes.
And I think there's something to that, definitely. I don't want to discount that, but I also want to say, like, at least from my experience writing, I know a lot of really prolific writers who they spit out tons of words really quickly. Being able to put stuff on the page is not that difficult for them, and they're really committed to this notion that just practicing a ton is what it's going to take to get better. A lot of the ones who can spit it out really quickly are not the best, from what I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And it has taken me a lot of practice to get better as a writer, but I feel like I feel like improvement doesn't just happen from doing something constantly and getting comfortable with. I feel like getting comfortable with failure, or with doing something and not thinking too hard about it, can be just as bad as being too cautious and not taking the risks necessary to improve. I honestly feel like there's some kind of in between, as far as like, I really don't want to get comfortable doing stand up badly. I don't want to get comfortable like going up on stage and, you know, just kind of doing shit and saying like, oh well, that's just part of the getting better process. Like, no, I should be doing it frequently and thinking really hard about it. I think that's the way that we're going to improve. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, like I said, I think we each have our own process. For me, I definitely feel it's important to. I feel like a good portion of why I progress, I think, as quickly as I do, is I don't hesitate to put my feet to the fire. I'll not purposely, but I'll go out to LA, and I know the LA open mics aren't going to be as nice. There, I know the 420 show at the keynote really opened my eyes because I felt like I couldn't go on stage if I'd smoked any reefer. That's like a personal battle for me because I want to smoke a little bit just to make myself feel a little more, at ease. And I use marijuana regularly, so it was almost like getting on an even keel, for lack of a better way to put it. But then and a lot of it was just who I was. I was nervous. I would forget my material. But, smoking weed wasn't going to help that at all. If I'm nervous and I can't remember my material, it's going to, marijuana isn't necessarily going to help that. On that 420 show, I'd been smoking weed all day. I was smoking weed out in the parking lot up until I got on stage. And it was only because it was 420 that I did that, and I was planning on bombing, and I actually did okay. Like, oh, okay, like, I feel like I had set an it wasn't artificial at the time, but I'd set an artificial limitation based on my progress because there did come a time where, like, oh, okay, I can't, and I'm not saying, like, now I can get as loaded as I want. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
Another time, I felt like my crowd work wasn't that great. Here's the thing about open mics. If somebody gives you 5 minutes, you don't have to take all 5. You can take 90 seconds. If someone gives you 10, you can take 5 or 6 or 7. You don't have to stand up there for 10. You guys, seriously, if you only have 5 minutes worth of material, do your 5 and get the fuck off stage, please. But I've gone up on stage a couple of times and I'm just going to do crowd work until I feel uncomfortable and get off stage. And I'll do crowd work, and then that crowd work will lead to, oh, I remember this joke, I can tell this joke. And that really helped me, and I felt like I had the crowds... they were vested at that point. And I noticed like there was a change in the audience. They seemed a little more vested. They were making more eye contact. They weren't fiddling with their phone as much when I started doing that. So that's super important to be able to take yourself out of your comfort zone. But to each his own. That's just what works for me.
Well, and you have improved a ton.
Thank you.
There's been a... No, not that you were never bad, but like
I was. You obviously don't remember. I was horrible. And I remember December 5th, 2014. I even posted it on Facebook as a life event. Managed to be funny on stage, and I had been doing open mics for like 2.5, maybe 3 months. And that was the first time I felt like, oh, okay. And that's when I really started adding structure from that point on.
It feels like within like the last couple of months, it's really taken off. Kind of for you.
I obsess over it.
Yeah, well, and so that's one thing I'm noting where I'm talking about the difference between being super prolific, putting out a lot of material constantly. If you can put in the time and focus necessary to back that up, then I think it's totally worth it. I guess what I'm saying is, I think getting comfortable thoughtlessly spitting out whatever you're, like, basically don't get comfortable doing it thoughtlessly. Which is my thought about how we improve at the craft, where, which is what you're not doing. Like, you are thinking about, like, you're putting a ton of time and effort into improving. So
a substantial amount of thought, and even my nomenclature and my words. I like, Leo's one of the few people to bring it up to me that there we go, Leo, there's your plug. Fuck! Can we go one fucking podcast without mentioning Leo? Oh, and Metallica. Anyway, like, he's like, yeah, I was talking about this joke, and he's like, no, because I talked about that when the Annie movie came out, and it was a black Annie, and my joke was, if there's any group of people who have been objectified and persecuted more than black people in this country, it's little ginger kids. And now, like the one, I'm like, this ugly little toe-headed ginger kid, her one gig, the one thing that she knew that if she worked really hard and sung and danced her heart out, she could be Annie, and no. Now the black, and I'd say like no, this beautiful little ebony princess, and he's like, no, you refer to the little girl, like, you're coming from a white person's perspective, but you keep referring to the redheaded girl as ugly, you keep referring to the black girl as this little beautiful ebony princess, and I was like, okay, good, that was my intention. Like, I'm trying to create this scene, but also absolve myself of the responsibility. So you're sitting there having this racist thought, but not putting it on me. Right. and I do. I put a lot. I really, like, if you'll notice, like, when I say, when I talk about people I date on stage, I'll say, yeah, so, I've been dating these people. I don't say girls. I'm heterosexual, but I say, I've been dating people or whatever, just to, I really try and create this atmosphere where I'm intelligently offending you to the point where you're not really mad at me so much as the joke or so much as yourself for having a similar thought process. That's a little deeper than where I am at right now, but that's kind of
I think that's where a lot of my comedy comes from.
Oh, I agree.
Is, you know, I take kind of like a thought process that just kind of pops up a little bit in my brain and I know is wrong, and I just sort of like try to play that up to a caricature where it's like the audience can kind of relate to me and agree that it's dumb and wrong, and we all just kind of have a laugh at that, you know? So, you know, I actually can't think of any examples. I'm terrible at examples when I need one, but a lot of my humor is just acting like a little kid, kind of.
Yeah.
And, you know, little kids they act on whims and just in their most, you know, selfish, indulgent desires. And so if you can kind of like play that up, the audience knows where you're coming from because, you know, everybody feels that too.
Yeah.
And so you just kind of like, you know, play up a flaw that you do have, but everybody can relate to. And
my favorite of your jokes is the one where you're trying to talk to the girl and you're really into, you know, bitches. You know, like if you know, like you're like, hey, what's up? Ew. Like I relate to that so freaking much, man, because like I've literally had the same girl do that to me, ew, and then when she realizes who I am, and I'm not anything fantastic, but back when I was in the band, one night I had this girl, I was talking to her, and she did something so similar to that, and then later on that night, like 2.5 hours later, when she saw me on stage, she was giving me the fuck me look, just smiling, and like waiting, I'm like, no, you are a disgusting human being, and I hate you now. And like I relate to that so much because you, Jeremy Rackauckus, walking up to that girl in your chili pepper sweatshirt, she goes, ew. But 2 years from now, when you're Jeremy Rackauckus, the guy who Louis C.K. is opening for, it's like, oh my God, hi, how are you? And you're the exact same fucking person.
yeah, it's gonna happen. That will happen. Where you know they do.
Or you can. I'll let you open for me.
Yeah, that's one of the two. Blane or Louis C.K. I'll take one or the other.
Either Louis opens for you or you open for me. I mean, basically it's the same, right?
Right. Well, oh, okay. I thought of one where I have a feminist joke where basically I say, you know, I agree with a lot of feminist ideas, but my thought process is like, but fuck, you know, like, and that is kind of what really goes through my head whenever like I wind up, which happens a lot. I agree with like a lot of what feminists are saying right now, not everything, but when I do agree, it's like, shit, they're right that women shouldn't have to like, you know, look and dress the way they do, but it's so great, you know, for me right now. Like, there's this like immature frustration with how that goes, and so I feel like even if people don't agree with me on it, like, you know, if you can kind of play it up to give them a sense of where you're coming from on it, and especially drawing it out as bringing up the subject through the lens of my own immaturity, I think, is a way that I try to approach those subjects in a way that isn't going to make everybody divisive. If the focus is on my own, you know, shitty features, then it's, you know, it's not like a condemnation of the audience. It's not trying to call anybody out on their beliefs. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of the angle that we tend to take as far as the one you were describing about, you know, not being racist. Not being racist so much as like, you know, drawing up a caricature of thoughts that, you know, that do kind of fly through your head. And
this is how my brain works anyway, but like in a nutshell, to describe my goal comedically is to take something really foul and make it seem innocent, or take something really innocent and make it seem foul. Like that's kind of in a nutshell a good way to describe what I try to do. Like the situation with
funerals thing.
Yeah, exactly. Or the Annie movie. They you know there's you know, black versions of movies made all the time. It's not the end of the world. I could give a fuck less about Annie. I think it's a horrible concept. The movie, everything about it, I think is just disgusting. I don't like gingers at all. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, but
I've never heard anybody express.
I'll tell you what, my favorite part of Annie was Jay-Z remixing one of their songs for Austin Powers. That's literally my favorite part of Annie.
Wow, I've never heard such vitriol expressed for Annie.
It's just like everything about it just oozes just. So I mean, I really honestly could care less if they make a black. Honestly, I think that's a great way to continue for those people who like Annie, want to continue subjecting people to that. I think that's a great way to do it, and
Yeah, I hate Annie too. I don't even like it a little bit.
I'm a big fan of you saw I was watching the Phantom. I don't know if you know, I was watching the Phantom when you came in. I love theatrical theater, theatrical acting. Big fan of it. Annie, not once ever was I like, oh yeah. Even same with Oliver Twist. Oliver Twist, I'm kind of on board with. That was one I was subjected to mercilessly as a child.
Yeah.
Mercilessly. If you wanted to be an actor, like, you're gonna be Oliver Twist.
You want to know something funny? I was in plays of both Annie and Oliver Twist when I was a kid.
Maybe I knew that. I deep Googled you. What characters did you play?
I mean, in both of those, I think I was just background
Annie.
characters. I was like a butler in Annie, and I was like one of the orphans in. I was like named Charlie or something.
See, I was doing real theater. Okay, I was doing the musicians of Bremen, buddy. Okay,
I'll have you
I
know.
was the cock.
The cock.
I was, or the rooster, whatever you want to call me.
Well, not to toot my own horn, but I did play John in a production of Peter Pan, so I rocked a top hat and.
Well, I played every single character in a one-man off-Broadway performance showing of Jaws the musical. It did not go over well. I'm so stupid. Somebody write that down. Jaws the musical.
Can you do that at one of the open mics, the one-man show?
I really want to expand. I was thinking it'd be fun to have and I would probably even be willing to, I mean, a very cheap actress, but hire an actress from like Central and just have a woman up on stage acting as my mom. And like every time I say something inappropriate, she corrects me. Or,
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like every time I'm like, so I'm in bed with this girl. Like, when was, I haven't really, but I definitely want to start expanding beyond just getting on stage. And not too much. I don't want to be a Jeff Dunham. I don't want to be Carrot Top. I don't want to be Gallagher. But just like to be able to have other dimensions. It'd be fun. I don't like it, but it'd be fun to have the option to get on stage and play a song on the guitar or something. I'm not a big fan of that. I love, what's his name?
Bo Burnham? Because he's got his whole musical thing. I really like his.
I love Bo Burnham a lot, actually, but no, I was going to say a little more locally. The young man whose name I can't remember at this point, I'll just edit it in.
Monarch?
Will you let me finish?
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm so sorry.
You like how I stare at the mic when I said that? No, he plays this 6-string banjo, and he sings, "Take me down to Pound Town, take me down."
Yeah, I don't know his name. He does the Gollum thing.
Yes, he does. I'm not a big fan of the Golden thing. Love his songs. Normally, I don't like comedic songs.
Right. I kind of agree. It's just I don't come for I come for a different high. When I watch stand-up comedy, I want like observational humor and like.
But we agree, Bo Burnham does a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
He's so good that anything I might have against, that kind of gimmicky.
Well, I think maybe he was smart enough to see beyond that and kind of give us a gimmicky musical comedy 2.0.
Right. Well, and speaking of gimmicky stuff, do you have any...
Not that he's gimmicky, but you know what I'm saying? Like, he found a way to legitimize what we were like, not really on board with.
Right. And so, yeah, gimmicky, I'm not even meaning it in like a negative term that is usually what but what do you think about like kind of the anti-humor comedians like Zach Galifianakis or Tim and Eric, like where it's very surreal stuff where they don't tell you the joke right out. It's more like they say something really weird and the joke kind of like it takes a second.
Zach is almost more of an intellectual. His is more of an intellectual comedy in a way that is really disguised very well. He's one of those guys that will have you on the floor laughing 20 seconds later than you probably should be. I was watching Comedians of Comedy the other night, just kind of as a refresher. I mean, I love everybody on there, Maria and Brian, everybody. Maria and Brian, call me guys, like I don't fucking know them. But Zach would have me. I'd be sitting there for like 2 minutes, like and then he would just say something that was just so brilliantly off the wall yet poignant that
Well,
but I don't typically like it.
It's not your thing.
Would you put like Bill Hicks in that category?
Yeah, I haven't heard enough of Bill Hicks, but what I've seen, I don't think so.
I mean, my favorites are Bill Burr and Louis C.K. Those are my two absolute like favorite living comics. Those are my two favorite, and I feel like they do a brilliant job of talking about stuff that's everyday, but not taking an everyday approach.
Right.
Like, I can't think of any examples.
Like pedophilia.
Exactly. Oh, dude, yeah. Like, maybe if we were, Louis C.K.'s bit about maybe if, we were nicer to pedophiles and, less children would be murdered.
Like
that's so
I can't
deeply
believe,
disturbing.
I can't believe the sheer just nutsack on that dude to go on national television. He's got 10 minutes for his set, and he decides that he's going to tackle racism and pedophilia as his two issues. I gotta respect the hell out of the dude for, he knew what he was doing. He knew he was taking it to a really uncomfortable place, and he did it because of that. Yeah. He wants to push those boundaries. I thought he had a remarkable set. I thought it was just
talk about the
awesome.
the second monologue he's done recently, the
Yeah.
most recent one. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. But I think you have to have the courage and wherewithal and intelligence and experience of somebody like Louis. Like, if he literally gave me that material, I would not. I mean, I'm not, in any way. I'm just trying to make the point. Or even somebody who's got a decade on me, I don't think would have been able to do it as well. Right. I feel like he, in the same way that I try and carefully word my stuff, I think he does such. I love Jerry Seinfeld's take about the joke about rape, and you shouldn't rape anybody unless you have a really good reason, like you want to have sex with them and they won't. And Jerry Seinfeld says, like, you tap dance or you step over every single laser in that joke. Like, that's an inappropriate joke. You should be, but you find a way to tap dance around all those lasers to where, like, we're laughing at it. That's a very inappropriate thing to say, but how he says it
right
gives us an opportunity to laugh at, something that really isn't a laughing matter.
Well, and that kind of, I guess, something that's been getting talked about a lot lately in our circles is how we should be thinking about our own comedy and what we should be thinking about as far as whether or not our jokes are offending other people, whether or not, anything is too taboo for stand-up. And there's like a school of thought, I guess, that's like, that we should never, self-censor or, change our act to avoid offending anybody else. And in a sense, I agree with that. But I think it might be looking at it the wrong way. Like, if we think about how Louis C.K. structures his joke, we're talking about tap dancing over lasers. You have to think about, you basically want to think about the fact that your jokes still present ideas. They still present a personality. You are still, it's not like these jokes exist in some magical fantasy land where, nothing else exists. Every joke encourages people to, accept some ideas, reject others. And so you really got to think about any joke that you tell on racism or something really hot button like pedophilia. You have to think through what exactly the implied message is here. Mm-hmm. And so it's not like a matter of self-censorship so much as it's like, think through what you're saying.
Yeah.
Basically, I think, you can go to a stand-up show and you shouldn't get heckled no matter what you say, but everybody is still allowed to think you're a dick. Everybody is still allowed to, come up and say after the show, like, I think you should reconsider what you're saying because I think, you're presenting some dickish ideas. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my take on, that whole issue.
Well, how did this conversation come about?
There's been a ton of talk among comedians right now, I guess, because I don't know how deep into this we want to go, but there's, been...
Well, just give me your take. You can be as PC as you'd like. I won't.
Okay, recently there's been an incident where somebody was attacked after a show. They got hit by a car by somebody in an audience, and it was at a show in which The person who was hit was transgender. It was at a show in which a joke referencing referencing Caitlyn Jenner had been made, and there was some dispute about it at the show. Whether or not the comedian telling the joke should feel partially responsible for what happened has been brought up, and it's brought up a lot of conversation about how much responsibility we have as comedians in the jokes we're telling. And it seems like there are a lot of people pushing in favor of absolute free speech, absolute non-self-censorship, and I'm not disagreeing with any of that part of it. And I'm especially not saying that, probably was, yeah.
I guess mine.
I'm especially not saying that Dylan, our fellow comic who was there, I absolutely don't think he was responsible for anything that went down that night. But it's raised the question of whether or not we need to think about what we say when we're on stage. And I think we do. I mean, I don't think it's self-censorship to say that we should consider what the ramifications of, what the ideas we're presenting in our jokes are, and just hold ourselves accountable. I believe David Sharp said as much at one point. And so, like I said, I'm absolutely not for heckling somebody, no matter how much you disagree with them. Like, while you're on stage, I believe you should get your 5 minutes, you should get your 10 minutes. Nobody should be interrupted, or you should just allow that to flow. But you are allowed to judge the person. You are allowed to think about what they're saying and hold them accountable for it. So that's my view. What?
Do you think that joke is what led to that guy's behavior?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I believe that Dylan is in no way responsible for what happened.
I couldn't agree with you more. Furthermore, I noticed the person who got offended is the same person who gets offended at just about every open mic.
Right.
What open mics are is where people who don't know their ass from a hole in the ground try to figure out how to stay on stage for 5 minutes without passing out and shitting themselves.
Right.
In my opinion, we need to spend a couple years in comedy before we even realize what our voice is. I'm at a point in my life where I would love to be able to do a clean 5-minute set. I would love that. 6 months ago, I had no interest in that at all. Now that I see the benefit of it, I should have that under my belt. If someone says, "Hey, can you do a show that a family-friendly show?" I would love to be able to say, "Yeah," because I want to be able to make everybody laugh. Mm. My sense of humor is a very, very foul, very inappropriate, dark sense of humor, which I think comes from just, and I don't want to toot my own horn, but I think it comes from having a slightly higher level of intelligence than everybody else. I have to look a little deeper to get that deep belly laugh. The funny thing is this created the dialogue. It wasn't the incident. That guy was an asshole. He was a bigoted, racist, just piece of shit. Him and his friend. And
we're talking about Dylan, right?
Yeah. No, the gentleman who was so fit-shaced drunk when we showed up, in no way, shape, or form should anybody have allowed him to even get behind the wheel of a car. No one wants to talk about that. They all just stood there and watched him. Like, that's fucking ridiculous. And then they all stood out in the parking lot as the dude who had already had to be rough-housed and basically, I guess, forced off of the property more than once. Like, people had to put hands on him to control him. I'm not, and even like Terrence was saying the same thing. He's like, "Hey, you guys should get out of the road. This guy cannot be trusted." And I think that guy is very bigoted. I think that, yeah, he has a problem with trans people, but I don't think it was that joke that made that happen.
Yeah.
I honestly think that could have quite possibly happened with or without that joke. I mean, I walked out after I thought he had been kicked out, and he's out there standing there talking to Dylan, and I think like Dylan was trying to calm him down, which in my opinion wasn't going to happen. He just needed to go. The dude was just a drunken buffoon. The dude had so much less business being there than Dylan's joke. It's not even funny.
Yeah. Now to clarify, I was not there. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know
you were not there.
That happened,
I was there up until about maybe 5 or 10 minutes before the actual hits, and nobody should be hit with their car. Another thing that bothers me that no one's really seemed to bring up is Terrence told me that the cops only wanted to talk to Terrence because Terrence was the only sober one. here's what I'm thinking. If you have 10 people saying, we all saw him hit her, or him or her, whoever it was, the person, I really don't want to offend them personally. I really don't. I don't see how that doesn't apply. I mean, there's so many of these other factors that are so much more important than, did Dylan tell an inappropriate joke? The simple fact of the matter, the police took a half-ass attempt to it from the get-go. Probably, in all honesty, because it was a trans person who was hit. No one wants to talk about that. We'd rather talk about how the joke Dylan's told several times, and by the way, I think it's very, very funny, and in no way, shape, or bear in mind, he's having sex with the transgender person, so there's an equal playing field at the beginning of that joke. He's not trying to claim any type of superiority in any way, shape, or form. He's laterally punching, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah, and...
Not up or down, and you know what I'm saying?
I don't know that we want to... I couldn't say the joke well, clearly enough to lay it out here, but...
I can tell you the joke.
We don't need to say the whole joke, but I don't think it was, I don't see anything outright offensive in it. I haven't dissected it a hell of a lot, so it's possible there's something on some abstract level that's, that there's some idea in there that's, not treating trans people with respect, but I don't think that that's there. And I mean, basically, let's assume the worst. Let's assume Dylan told the worst joke ever. Dylan's joke cannot replace a lifetime of experiences for a dude that whatever ideas that dude had in his mind that
You mean the gentleman who was old enough to be our father?
Whoever the dude is,
the gentleman who hits Sarah's friend.
Mm-hmm. I mean, anything that shaped that dude's opinion, which that's a lifetime of experiencing, like, a whole culture and a whole worldview that Dylan is in no way responsible for. He was not inciting anybody to violence. The joke is very tame, by the way. Let's clarify that. That's
I agree.
There's. I mean, if anything, as I understand it, there was basically. There was already kind of conflict between that individual and the person who was hit inside the room, right?
There was conflict with that gentleman and everybody. I had to. I'm a little bit of a hothead, and I was literally ready to. I had a plan. I was going to hurt him. That's where my head went, because I just instantaneously did not like him, and he kept opening his mouth. And I know I joke a lot on stage. I just cannot stand bigotry and racism and sexism. I cannot fucking stand it. I think it's a good portion of why I joke about it so much, because really deep down inside I hate it, and that's so much me, and I recognize myself in a lot of that the behavior. So that's kind of how I deal with it. But I just did not like that guy nothing about him. He should have been kicked out. He was drunk. He was an idiot. And that guy was by all means way more of the problem than the joke. What also didn't help is he just didn't get kicked out, and it was like all this arguing. I mean, he was sitting next to like Leo's brother and his friends, and like a bunch of black and brown and trans people. He was obviously outnumbered, and he was just so far beyond it, he didn't even see that. And another thing that I'm just going to go ahead and bring up, and I'll edit it out in post, was the fact that, and I'm not going to say Tara and her friend didn't have a right to be upset. The dude was a piece of shit. He was very narrow-minded. But both Tara and her friend get on stage and rant. Didn't tell any jokes. Her friend tried to rip into Dylan. So they had decided the joke was offensive before that had ever happened.
Right.
I mean, they both got on stage. Oh, you think trans lifestyle's funny, and you've only had sex with 5 girls. I've had sex with way more girls than you. And it's like that. Okay, first of all, it's not comedy. Second of all, they are perpetuating the problem at that point. So to sit here and say it was Dylan's joke is it's asinine. I'm sure Dylan's joke didn't help, but it sure as hell,
Right. Well, so basically, let's say. I'm sure, let's say you tell a joke that involves race. You tried your best to make it something that that was not offensive, but it does spark a conversation at least. And let's say from that conversation, some people in it get angry with one another, and one of them beats the other person up. You are not, like, you are not responsible for that person getting beaten up. Like, you have still kept everything to this sector of civil conversation, and it's the person who escalated it beyond that point that that bears all the responsibility. I think it's one thing if you are outright inciting violence or hatred. Mm-hmm. That's not at all what Dylan was doing. And so yeah, I'm absolutely not blaming Dylan for anything. However, I will say that from this we have gotten to a conversation where it seems like people are viewing it as a choice between never offending anybody ever, like scrapping a joke if it offends anybody ever, and absolute everything goes. Everything I say is right, plug my ears, la la la.
Yeah.
And I don't think those are the only two options. I think we can recognize that people can be offended and still be wrong, but that doesn't mean that being offended is a trivial, that doesn't mean that everybody who's offended is wrong.
People are offended by my existence. The fact that I exist, people are offended by that. People are offended by the fact that you exist. There are people who are going to look for any reason to be offended.
People like me, let's
not
get too carried away.
I'm talking on more of a global format than locally. Everybody loves you locally, but there are people in other countries who want all Americans to die, and I got to agree with them.
No, yeah, that was just a joke about my arrogance. But my thing is, obviously you can't avoid offending everybody. That doesn't mean that every person who is offended should be ignored. Like, I think basically we come to a road here where we think about, we talk about developing our own voice, and it's like, how do we go about doing that? Do we do it just by only thinking about the things we want to, or do we do it by receptiveness and thinking about feedback from what the rest of the world is telling us, and trying to empathize and think through how our words and ideas are interacting with other people? And I think it's the latter way. I think it's through reflection and thinking about the impact of our words on others that we're going to improve as comics. So just from a tactical standpoint of improving, I think that
I think a good way to look at it is if you're offending an individual, maybe don't lay so much credence to it. Keep it in mind. If you're offending groups, maybe that's something to consider. If you're offending an entire population of trans people, or if you're offending an entire race or sex or creed or religion, which is kind of the unfair example because I will make fun of all religions. But if you're offending individuals, that's one thing. That's a given, if you ask me. None of us. I'm sure Jerry Seinfeld has offended somebody in his lifetime. I'm sure he's offended. I promised you, somebody's walked up to Jerry Seinfeld and said, "I don't like that joke." I promise you that has happened.
Right.
So, I think it's just a matter of what it is that you want to represent. I love blue humor. I love dark humor. Rodney Dangerfield and Louis C.K. and Sam Kinison. Those guys are and Daniel Tosh and Theo Vaughn, who I'll be performing with on August 1st.
Super psyched for that. Me too.
Yes. Oh, that's right. I got a joke about that. I'll give you. Wait, what's today? Today's okay. Yeah, this will. I can't tell you. All right, I got a joke about that. Well, I'll tell you, and I'll just edit it out. I'm gonna have a joke about how it's me, you, Kat, Lori, Camila Cleese, and Quincy. Mm-hmm. So my joke's gonna be about how I am obviously the most unattractive person on this whole lineup. Like, I shouldn't even fucking be here. Like, that's gonna be the gist of the joke. Like, I'm not used to being the most unattractive. This is awkward.
You're the only thing saving me from this joke, so.
Well, I'm like, am I better looking than Jeremy? I'm like, for the sake of the joke, we'll say no. But no,
I think we could give Quincy a run for his money.
That's no. He's healthy. He's tan. He's young. He's employed.
Yeah, fuck him.
He speaks so eloquently. But yeah, I remember when I first started out, I would share my jokes with my close friends, pretty much anybody. I would make stupid little videos here in this room, and I'd send them to my friends, IM them, like, what do you think? And I remember there's two different people who said, I think this joke is kind of offensive, and I asked why, and it was a pedophilia joke, and I was like, okay, why do you think it's offensive? Like, it's pedophilia, it kind of makes me uncomfortable. And I'm like, so when's the last time, pedophilia has been brought up? And like, did you laugh? Yeah, I laughed. Okay. So I feel like with comedy, and especially comedy is the last bastion of free speech. I know it's been said before, but I've been saying that for a couple of years now. I truly, honestly feel like this is one of the few places where we can say whatever the fuck we want, regardless of whether or not it's true, regardless of whether or not it's offensive. But that doesn't mean you should. It's just,
Right.
Get up there and like, yeah, fuck gooks and black people steal it. No, that's not funny. That's stupid. But if you can make people laugh at your racism,
it's what you're doing with that offensiveness, with that freedom to talk about these things that people generally don't want to. Most people are not going to talk. You're not going to see a story published. You're not going to see a short story published, by the New Yorker or something that's going to be about pedophilia.
Exactly.
But Louis C.K. is gonna talk about it, and he's gonna get away with it, and he's gonna make us question and think about things that we wouldn't. That we wouldn't otherwise.
How much do you hear about things like, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but I don't hear too much about things like pedophilia or spousal abuse or actual good old-fashioned racism. You don't hear it. It's in the guise of like maybe a Nancy Grace story or reporting on rioting in places that coincidentally happen to be ridiculously impoverished. Mm-hmm. It's there. It's just packaged in a way where we can very easily say like, oh no, they're just acting like animals, or or they're just confused. People are choosing to be homosexual. It's like the fact that these thought processes exist. There's a reason for that. And
Right.
when we upset the status quo, people may leave from a show going like, oh, pedophilia. I remember when my friend said he was touched by his uncle, or what. That's a bad example. But it's going to just remind you that stuff exists, and I don't think we should live in a bubble. I don't think we should. By no means should we be cruising up and down the streets looking for guys in ice cream trucks, that want to molest children. But at the same time, as a parent, it's up to me, since I am a little bit more aware of things like pedophilia, to remind my kids what they should and shouldn't do to avoid being molested. And it's also my responsibility to make sure that, they're in places where that won't happen. But I think a lot of us, tend to kind of pretend that type of stuff doesn't exist. And I can't live like that.
We're just too honest, guys. We're too.
I don't know. I mean, I spent 3 decades of my life lying and cheating and being a piece of shit. And it was around the same time when I joined the military that they started making me volunteer, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the shit out of it. And I didn't know that you could feel accomplishment or joy from helping other people. I'd never experienced that before.
Wait, that's a thing?
It is. It's weird, dude. It's really weird. But that kind of snowballed the effect, and I used to volunteer a lot more. I don't do it anymore. But just being nicer and realizing that your words and your actions carry weight, even in comedy. I think we've established that even in comedy, for certain people, your words and your actions are going to carry weight, but especially on a one-on-one environment. And I don't want to do that. I don't. So doing things like volunteering and helping out other people, like pulling over. Like, here's something you never see in California: people pulling over when somebody's on the side of the road with a flat tire. Nobody does that out here. Nobody does that out here. And if I pull over to help you, what are you gonna? You're like, what? What do you want? What? I don't have any money. What, do you want to rob me?
Wait, out here? I thought we're a little friendlier out here.
Nope.
Than,
No. Down south, when I lived in like Alabama or Florida or Mississippi, if I was on the side of the road, people would pull over. Sometimes 2 or 3 times. Just like check my, I feel my tires low. I pull over and take a look. Sometimes I'd have 1, 2, 3 people pull over in like a 5-minute window. Hey, you all right? You need a ride? And I in turn started doing the same. I remember the last time I did it was funny because this guy's fixing his tire. He's got a windbreaker on. I'm like, hey, buddy, you need some help? And he turns around and his windbreaker says sheriff across the front. I'm like, you got this.
Right.
You're good.
I feel like a lot of people down here just wouldn't even know what to do. We're not a very pragmatic people here in.
We're packed in like sardines. The human condition doesn't exist. We're here to be movie stars. We're here to nobody who lives in LA is from LA.
Right.
You know, we're all here for work. We're displaced. We had friends and family in Wisconsin, but it's like, oh, you wrote this script. Come out here for $30,000 for the next 2 years and starve your fucking self until you go back home. And then people come out here, they've got $30,000 to live off for 2 years, so of course they're going to be a little cranky.
Right.
They don't have time to think about the human condition. And that's basically every motherfucker in Hollywood right now. They're making $1,200 a month, which is still more than I make. I'm just kidding. I don't.
Yeah, what a terrible amount of money to make. I make so much more than that. So yeah, how did we get here?
That's a good question. Organically.
Organically, the old-fashioned way.
But we definitely agree that I'm funnier than you.
Yeah, okay. We'll roll with it. It's your podcast.
I'm gonna make a soundboard with all of your responses. Jeremy, would you say I'm smarter than you? Yes. All right, let's end this bitch so we can edit all that stuff
down to something palatable, for God's sake.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was kind of offended, but, you know, if it was somebody else who led the charge about the whole censorship thing, I probably would have paid more attention, but Tara has a tendency to get offended every fucking night, and so I have a tendency to not to give credence to. I mean, I love her personally. She's my friend. She annoys the shit out of me, but, you know, in reference to what I was talking about earlier, I consider myself a much more compassionate person these days. A few years ago, I would have told her to fuck off to her face, and that's not really something that's going to benefit anybody. And I realize that now. And plus, I'd much rather be a compassionate person and just be your friend.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the way we're going to resolve this stuff. Yeah. Is we might be wrong about everything that we said, but
quite possibly.
I think if we keep trying to empathize and reason and, you know, figure this out.
Well, I think one thing we can learn. I'm sorry, I don't mean to step over you, but I think one thing we can take away from this is be very particular about what you bring to stage. Yep. Maybe have an idea of why you're saying that. What is your intention? Do you want to offend trans people? If not, is your wording correctly to where trans people are going to get a kick out of it? Louis C.K. in his second to last. God, I'm just going to suck his dick if I ever meet him. He just totally tore apart my religious view on atheism. Literally just tore me and my personal beliefs down. And I was laughing the whole time because I don't have to agree with him. And he's making sense.
Yeah, where it's
you know, he's like talking about atheism. He's like, oh, God doesn't exist. Did you look everywhere? Did you look in the basement? Did you look in the bathroom? And like, that's fucking hilarious. Like, good point. How do I know? Who the fuck am I? I'm one little speck of dust in this universe. Who the fuck am I to say? You know? I mean, he brilliantly worded it to the point where like this guy is making a mockery of so many of my deeply held beliefs. And I find it hilarious.
Yeah, well, that's great. I think that's probably, you know.
And I'm born again now because of it. I'm sorry. Here, let's end on you. What do you want to end on?
Me.
Ladies, Jeremy's single and ready to Christian mingle.
I'm going to China for a year, so you might want you might just want to hold up on that.
Yeah. We're taking bets on whether or not Luke's going to come back. Or excuse me, is going to come back with a wife. A Chinese wife. Should we start taking bets on whether or not you're going to come back with a wife?
You know,
because with insert name here, we feel it's an inevitability.
Right. Well, I certainly wouldn't want to disrupt any betting pools, so I'll leave that one to your guys' imagination.
But you know what? I don't want to offend you. Would you be coming back with a Chinese person to whom you would be romantically entwined with?
Right.
Regardless of gender.
Right.
Are you attracted to Chinese women? Are you like every other stereotypical guy, myself included, who finds Asian women attractive?
I dated a Chinese girl for 3 years.
Did she know?
Did she know? Yeah, just barely, just a little bit.
So, but was that just geographical convenience, for lack of a better way to put it, or do you find? Are you going to fall in love 30,000 times over when you get there? Is that what's going? Because I could like if I went down like Brazil or El Salvador or even like Japan, I could totally see myself falling madly in love 1,000 times over.
I honestly couldn't imagine anything happening with a Chinese girl, mainly because I you need to be able to communicate. For me, at least, I would need to be able to communicate with somebody. It's not gonna. I couldn't really keep up anything romantic with somebody I couldn't share my beautiful personality with. And
the language of love is international.
That's bullshit. And,
Go on.
yeah, so I really think that language would just be too huge of a barrier. So as far as however serious this question was, yeah, I don't think I'm coming back with a Chinese wife.
Okay.
But maybe maybe a Chinese dog. I don't know. You don't need to communicate with the
I
dog.
think they're Chinese, right?
What is?
Ipsilopso, is that how you pronounce it?
I'm not sure. Is there?
China is known for a few breeds of dogs, none of which I can.
I don't know anything about China. What am I doing? What? I'm going there for a year.
You and Luke are gonna come back as a couple. You're like, we're all here all alone.
We were all we had.
You're gonna have a Brokeback Mountain moment.
I think Luke is the lucky one there. Luke could do a lot worse than me.
I think you're both a catch. And honestly, I think you guys you'd be doing all right. Luke's a good guy, and you're a good guy, and I think any woman or person who you date will be very lucky. Now you say the same about me.
Blane, you are beautiful and special, and every woman loves you.
That's what it says above my mirror in the bathroom. All right. Good luck in China. Thank you very much for coming on the Blane Laramie Comedian Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Jeremy, as you mentioned, will be performing August 1st at the Hong Kong in Ventura, California, opening up for Theo Vaughn. We've got a killer lineup: Quincy L. Johnson, Part 2, Lori Marie, Camila Cleese, Jeremy Rackauckus. I guess Theo Vaughn is going to be there. I'm performing Blane Laramie, Kat Wagner.
That's a lot of people.
That was a lot of. We all get 2 minutes each.
Great.
We should all go up on stage at the same time, like
Actually,
all 5 of us.
I'm supposed to get 10 minutes because I use my roast battle.
Oh,
weight
shit.
On this, so if you guys want to see the quintessential Jeremy jokes, you're gonna
you
get all
see
of
his
them.
hot 10.
I only have 10 minutes of material. I'm confident, so
I'm gonna do my 5 twice.
Right. Just a loop.
Just a loop.
Yeah. So see us then. Any last thoughts here?